My name is Lily. I'm 24 years old, and until a few months ago, I thought I had finally found the kind of love I always dreamed of. Jack, my boyfriend, was 26 and we met through Bumble. On paper, we were the perfect couple. Young, ambitious, good-looking, always smiling in the pictures we posted. From the outside, it probably looked like we were living some kind of fairy tale. But what no one saw, what even Jack didn't see, was that behind that picture-perfect relationship, I was weaving a web of lies so tangled that eventually it trapped me too. When I first met Jack, I felt a spark that I hadn't felt in years. He wasn't like the guys I'd dated before. He was steady, patient, and kind in a way that disarmed me. He had this calmness about him, the kind of presence that made me feel safe. After only a few dates, he already talked about wanting something serious. Normally, that would scare me off, but at the time, I leaned into it. I told myself, this is what love is supposed to feel like. Fast. Exciting. Consuming. Within weeks, I was meeting his friends, sitting with his parents for dinner, being tagged in his family group photos. He made me feel like I belonged somewhere for the first time in a long time. I wanted so badly to be the kind of girlfriend who deserved that. But deep down, I wasn't. You see, I've battled depression for years. Some days it feels like I'm at war with myself. My moods swing, my thoughts spiral, and sometimes I don't even recognize the person in the mirror. I take medication, but it doesn't always silence the storm inside me. I didn't tell Jack the full truth. I was terrified that if he knew how dark it could get, he'd leave. So instead, I hid it. I smiled through the bad days, gave excuses when I couldn't cope, and put on the mask of being the fun, carefree girlfriend. But that mask came with lies. Just a month into our relationship, I created one that would snowball into everything that followed. I told Jack I babysat every Wednesday. It sounded innocent enough, a little side gig to make some cash. But in reality, it was my excuse. A night where I didn't have to explain myself. A night where I could do whatever I wanted, without questions. At first, I used those Wednesdays to just escape, go for drives, meet up with friends, anything to feel like I wasn't trapped in being the perfect girlfriend. But soon, those nights turned into something else. Old habits crept back in, old flings resurfaced, and I slipped into another life I thought I had left behind. Jack, being as observant as he was, caught on quickly. He noticed that the babysitting jobs never seemed consistent. Sometimes I'd say I was working, but he'd call me, and I'd answer from the quiet of my car instead of a noisy house. Other times, I'd cancel last minute, claiming the parents didn't need me after all. He started asking questions. Which family is it? How many kids do they have? Why do they always cancel? And every time I panicked. I wasn't good at lying under pressure, but I found a way to twist things. I'd cry, I'd make myself sound fragile, and I'd send desperate texts like, "Please don't leave me. I can't lose you. You mean everything to me." And every time Jack stayed, that became our pattern. I lied, he forgave, and I sank deeper into my own mess. It wasn't just the babysitting. Jack began noticing other changes in me too. I used to send him snaps late at night, little goodnight selfies or silly pictures. But then I stopped. When he asked why, I said I was tired or that Snapchat was glitching. The truth was, those nights I was offline, I was with someone else. Someone I had been hooking up with before Jack entered the picture. I carried the guilt like a shadow, but instead of facing it, I turned it into another shield. When Jack confronted me one night about why I was so distant, I told him about my depression, about the medication, even hinted at maybe having borderline personality disorder. I made it sound like my mental health explained everything, the distance, the inconsistency, the secrets. Jack, being the kind-hearted man he was, backed off immediately. He gave me space. He believed me. But my lies weren't invisible. They left marks, literal ones. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, Jack noticed bruises on my thighs. I panicked. I tried to keep the lights off, to hide under the sheets, but he saw them. He asked, "What happened? Did you hurt yourself?" I laughed nervously and told him I just bruise easily, that I had bumped into the coffee table. He looked concerned but let it go. What he didn't know was that those bruises weren't accidents. They were the aftermath of nights I'd spent with someone else. The more tangled my lies became, the more defensive I grew. And eventually, I flipped the story entirely. I started telling my friends and family that Jack was controlling, that he didn't let me breathe, that he made me feel small, that sometimes he was even rough with me. It was a calculated move. Because I knew that if anyone ever questioned the bruises, if anyone ever wondered why I seemed distant, I could point the finger at him. Slowly, people started to believe me. My friends stopped inviting him to group hangouts. My parents gave him cold looks when he came around. They whispered about him behind his back. And all the while, Jack had no idea. He thought he was just trying to love me through my struggles. Looking back now, I can see how cruel it was. Jack wasn't controlling. He wasn't abusive. He wasn't the villain I painted him to be. But at the time, convincing people otherwise made me feel safer. It gave me cover for the nights I disappeared, for the lies I spun, for the bruises I couldn't hide. But the truth has a way of clawing to the surface. And it was my own sister who pulled the first thread. One evening, while chatting casually with Jack, she mentioned how strange it was that I was working late the other night when she had actually seen me leaving the house at 3 a.m., getting into a car with someone who definitely wasn't him. She didn't mean to expose me, it slipped out. But the damage was done. When Jack confronted me about it, his face was different this time. Not angry, not accusatory, just hurt. He asked me, "Why would your sister say that if it wasn't true?" I froze. Then I did what I always did. I denied. I twisted. I made it sound like she was confused or stirring up drama. And once again, Jack wanted so badly to believe me that he let it slide. But I saw it. The seed of doubt had been planted. And from that moment on, nothing was the same. Jack wasn't the naive boyfriend anymore. He started paying closer attention, watching me with quiet suspicion. He didn't argue as much, but his silence was sharper than any fight. He was connecting the dots I thought I had hidden. And though I didn't realize it at the time, that was the beginning of the end. Because once trust begins to crack, there's no way to put it back together. When Jack's silence replaced his questions, I thought for a moment that maybe I'd won. That maybe my lies were enough to keep him believing me. But I underestimated him. His silence wasn't surrender, it was observation. He was watching me, quietly piecing together the puzzle I had so recklessly scattered across our lives. And while Jack grew quieter, I grew more reckless. The truth was that I wasn't just unfaithful with one person, I was juggling three. The first was Dylan, an old friends with benefits I had before Jack. He was familiar, easy, and knew exactly how to say the right things to make me feel desired. When Jack was steady and reliable, Dylan was reckless and thrilling. It was easy to slip back into old habits with him, convincing myself it didn't mean anything. The second was Marcus, my ex. We had broken up years ago, but there was something about him that never let me go. He had this hold over me, a way of pulling me back in with a single message. We'd meet late at night, parked in his car, or sneak into each other's apartments when the city was asleep. It was toxic, and I knew it, but I craved the danger of it. The third was Ryan, a guy I'd casually dated before Jack, but never fully let go of. He came back into my life almost by accident, an old text thread, a "Hey, how are you?" that turned into late-night meetups. He was never serious, just another distraction. But it didn't matter. Every Wednesday, every late-night excuse, I had one of them waiting. 3 men. 3 stories. 3 sets of lies I had to remember.
It was exhausting.
I'd mix up details sometimes, nearly slip when Jack asked me where I'd been or what I'd been doing. To cover my tracks, I leaned harder into my mental health struggles. I'm tired. I couldn't sleep. I was out clearing my head. Those became my shields. And Jack, as patient as ever, tried to understand. But even patience has limits. One night, Jack noticed again that I wasn't snapping him after midnight. He asked why I always went offline. I laughed it off, said maybe my Wi-Fi was acting up, or maybe Snapchat was glitching. But I could tell he wasn't convinced. His eyes lingered on me longer, as though he was searching for cracks in my story. Then there were the bruises. No matter how careful I was, they kept showing up on my thighs, my arms, even my neck once. Jack noticed them all. Each time, I had an excuse ready. I bruise easily. I tripped. I banged into the door. But the more I denied, the more I saw something shift in his face. He wasn't buying it anymore. And yet, instead of stopping, I sank deeper. I twisted the narrative even further, telling my friends that Jack was rough with me, that sometimes he didn't even realize how hard he grabbed my arm. I planted the idea that maybe he was the one leaving marks.
People believed me.
My closest friends started looking at Jack with suspicion. My parents whispered to each other when his name came up. I had painted him as the villain so thoroughly that no one thought to question me. Everyone except Jack. He never exploded. He never screamed. But he was watching. The turning point came when my sister slipped again. She and Jack had always gotten along, maybe even too well. One evening, during a casual conversation, she mentioned she had seen me get into a car late at night. It wasn't the first time she had noticed something off, and this time, she made it sound almost deliberate. I don't know why Lily says she's working. I literally saw her leave at 3 a.m. the other night. Jack's face shifted when he heard that. He didn't say much to her, but I could see the wheels turning in his head. Later that night, he confronted me. Why would your sister say that, Lily? Why would she think you were sneaking out if you were working? His voice wasn't angry. It was tired. And that weariness was worse than rage. I panicked. I told him my sister was confused, that she must have mistaken me for someone else. I gaslit him like I always did, insisting he was letting other people plant doubts in his head. He didn't argue back. He just looked at me with those sad, searching eyes and nodded. But I knew he didn't believe me anymore. From then on, Jack pulled away. His texts grew shorter. His calls were less frequent. He stopped asking about my day, or checking if I got home safe. At first, I thought he was giving up on me. But then I realized he wasn't pulling away because he didn't care. He was pulling away because he was paying attention. And that terrified me. The guilt started eating at me in ways I couldn't control. I stopped sleeping. I jumped whenever my phone buzzed, terrified Jack might have seen something or found proof. My lies began to tangle together, and I struggled to remember what story I'd told him last. Meanwhile, the three men in my life were pulling me in different directions. Dylan wanted to keep things casual, Marcus wanted me to admit I still loved him, and Ryan just wanted to keep sneaking around for fun. None of them cared about the damage I was doing. None of them cared about Jack. And yet, Jack was the one carrying the weight of my betrayal. The cracks were spreading, and I could feel everything unraveling. My sister's slips, the bruises I couldn't explain, the late nights I couldn't justify, it was all piling up. Then came the Wednesday night that shifted everything. I told Jack I was babysitting again, just like always. He casually asked, "Which kid are you watching tonight?" It was a simple question, but it caught me off guard. I gave a name I'd used before, but I couldn't remember the details I told him weeks earlier. He didn't argue. He didn't accuse. He just stared at me, his face unreadable, and asked softly, "Lily, are you sure you're telling me the truth?" That question hit harder than anything else. Not because of how he said it, but because of what I saw in his eyes. Disappointment, not anger. And that disappointment scared me more than anything, because it meant he was finally letting go of the image he had of me. He wasn't clinging to the hope that I was the girl he thought I was. He was starting to see me for who I really was. And once someone sees the truth, there's no going back. After that Wednesday night, when Jack asked me so calmly if I was really telling the truth, I felt something shift. For the first time, I knew he didn't believe me anymore. He wasn't yelling, he wasn't accusing, but I could see it in his eyes. Doubt had replaced the blind faith he once had in me. And that terrified me. Jack's love had always been patient, forgiving, almost too good to be true. But now it was changing. He still stayed. He still tried to act normal. But his questions stopped being curious. They became quiet observations. His silence wasn't peace. It was distance. And the more distant Jack grew, the more desperate I became to control the narrative. I started doubling down on my lies, twisting every sign of my betrayal into a weapon against him. If I came home late and he asked questions, I'd burst into tears, saying he didn't trust me. If he noticed bruises on my body, I whispered that maybe he was too rough sometimes. If he pulled away, I told him he was abandoning me in the middle of my mental health struggles. It worked at first. Not because he believed me, but because he wanted so badly to protect me. Jack wasn't the type to walk away easily. He kept giving me grace, even as I burned through every bit of trust he had left. But outside of our relationship, the lies were spreading too. I told my friends that Jack was controlling, that he didn't like me going out alone, that he checked my phone, that he left marks on me. None of it was true, but once those words left my mouth, I couldn't take them back. My best friend, Jenna, started giving Jack dirty looks whenever we all hung out. My coworker, Anna, asked me quietly if I was okay at work, like she suspected something darker was happening at home. Even my parents began to turn cold toward him. My mom once pulled me aside and said, "Sweetheart, if something's wrong, you can always come home. You don't have to stay with him." I hugged her, fighting back tears, not because I was touched, but because I realized how easily everyone believed my story. And Jack? He felt it. He noticed the way people stopped inviting him places, the way my friends avoided eye contact with him, the way my family grew stiff whenever he was around. He didn't argue about it, but I could see the pain in his eyes. He was being painted as the villain in his own love story, and he didn't even know how to defend himself. Still, Jack wasn't stupid. He began quietly piecing everything together. He noticed the patterns, the late nights, the sudden disappearances, the way I'd turn my phone off whenever I left. He noticed how my stories didn't always line up, how my excuses recycled themselves in sloppy ways. One night, he asked me why I always seemed so exhausted. "You say you can't sleep, but it's more than that, Lily. You come home drained, like you've been somewhere else." I snapped at him, told him he didn't understand depression, told him he was minimizing my struggles. He apologized like he always did. But I could tell, by the way he watched me afterward, that he didn't believe it. The guilt started eating me alive in strange ways. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling while Jack slept beside me. My chest would tighten when I saw his phone light up with texts from his mom or his best friend, because I knew they were starting to notice the distance too. People whispered, and even if I never heard the words, I felt the judgment. But instead of confessing, I sank deeper. The bruises were the hardest to explain away. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, Jack caught me pulling my sleeves down too quickly. He gently tugged them back and saw the faint purple marks along my arms. His voice was soft when he asked, "Lily, who's doing this to you?" For a split second, the truth almost escaped my lips. But then I saw the look in his eyes. Fear, concern, love. And I twisted it. I whispered that maybe it was him, that maybe he didn't realize how hard he held me sometimes when we argued. The way his face fell haunts me to this day. He looked horrified, like he couldn't trust his own memory anymore. Like maybe I had planted just enough doubt in his mind that he started to question himself. And when I told our friends and family the same thing, that Jack was the one who left those bruises, they believed me instantly. The next time we went to a group hangout, I watched the way everyone looked at him. The whispered conversations, the guarded stares. Jack sat beside me, smiling politely, while everyone treated him like he was some kind of monster. I should have felt guilty. I should have stopped. But instead, I hid behind it. Because as long as everyone believed Jack was abusive, no one would suspect me. But Jack wasn't blind. Even if he didn't fight back publicly, I could see it in his eyes, he knew. He wasn't sure how much, or who, or when, but deep down, he knew something wasn't adding up. And that scared me more than anything. Because when someone you love stops believing the story you've built, the whole mask starts to slip. The real breaking point came late one Friday night. I told Jack I was going for a drive to clear my head, that I couldn't sleep again. In reality, I was meeting Marcus, my ex. We parked in his car on a quiet street, laughing and kissing while my phone buzzed silently in my purse. I thought I was being careful, Snapchat location turned off, phone on silent, sneaking back before dawn. But when I walked through the front door, Jack was waiting. Not pacing. Not furious. Just sitting on the couch in the dark, his face unreadable. My heart dropped.
He didn't yell.
He didn't accuse. He just looked at me and said, "Lily, I know." And in that moment, the world I had built on lies began to crumble. When I walked through the door that night and saw Jack sitting there in the dark, something inside me snapped. He wasn't pacing, he wasn't yelling, he was calm.
Too calm.
And that calm terrified me more than any screaming match ever could. His voice was steady when he said the words that froze me in place. "Lily, I know." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. My mind raced for excuses, the kind I'd always used to wriggle out of the corner. My sister must be lying. My depression is acting up. He's imagining things. But the way he looked at me told me it was useless. He wasn't guessing anymore. He wasn't suspicious. He knew. I tried anyway. I dropped my bag, ran to him, and begged. I cried. I swore on my life that my sister had been trying to stir up drama, that people were against me, that he was letting paranoia win. I even tried the card that had worked so many times before. "Jack, you know how bad my depression gets. Sometimes I just need space. I can't handle the pressure. Please don't leave me." But Jack didn't move. His eyes were steady, and his silence sliced me open. Then he said the words that broke me more than anything else ever had. "You didn't just cheat, Lily.
You destroyed me.
You made me the villain in a story where all I ever did was try to love you." I broke.
Completely.
Because in that moment, I realized what I had done. I hadn't just lied. I hadn't just betrayed him physically. I had built an entire alternate reality where Jack, the man who had been nothing but kind and patient, was painted as abusive, controlling, dangerous. And people believed me. My friends, my coworkers, even my family. They looked at him like he was a monster, when the monster had been me all along. The truth poured out of me, piece by piece, like a dam breaking. The late nights weren't insomnia. I was sneaking out to meet other men. The bruises weren't accidents or his doing. They were from Dylan, Marcus, and Ryan. The babysitting job? It had never existed. From the very beginning, it had been a lie. I confessed everything, sobbing until I could barely form words. But Jack didn't explode. He didn't curse me or demand answers. He just sat there, silent, while the world I had built around us crumbled to ash. And when I was done, when I had nothing left but the ugly truth spilling at his feet, he stood up. And he left. The sound of the door closing behind him was louder than any fight we had ever had. It echoed in my chest, a hollow reminder that the one person who had truly loved me was gone. The days that followed were worse than any nightmare I could have imagined. My sister told my parents what had really been happening. Slowly, my lies began to unravel in front of everyone. The sympathy I had built for myself turned into disgust. My best friend Jenna, who once gave Jack dirty looks, now looked at me with shame. My mom, who had whispered that I could always come home, now wouldn't even meet my eyes. Even my coworkers, who once pitied me, avoided me like I was carrying something contagious. And Jack? He disappeared from my life completely. He blocked me on everything. No texts, no calls, no explanations. I saw through mutual friends that he had moved out of his apartment and cut contact with people who had once doubted him. He started going out again, dinners with his buddies, trips with his family. There were pictures of him smiling, really smiling, in ways I hadn't seen in months. He was rebuilding himself, piece by piece, away from me. And me? I was left in the wreckage. I sat in my apartment, surrounded by silence, replaying every moment in my head. Every excuse. Every bruise I lied about. Every time Jack had looked at me with love, and I had answered with betrayal. The guilt was suffocating. At night, I'd hear his voice in my head, whispering, "You made me the villain in a story where all I ever did was try to love you." Those words haunted me, because they were true. This had been my first real relationship, my first chance at something steady, something pure. And I destroyed it with my own hands. I don't even know why. Jack gave me everything, love, patience, loyalty. But I wanted more. More attention, more thrills, more validation. And in chasing that, I lost everything. Cheating doesn't just break relationships, it breaks people.
I didn't just cheat on Jack.
I ruined his reputation. I shattered his trust in people, and I turned his own friends and family against him. And now, I have to live with the fact that he'll never trust me again, and he shouldn't. Jack has moved on. He'll find someone who truly deserves the love he gave me. Someone who won't waste it the way I did. And me? I'll carry this guilt forever. Because I didn't just lose Jack. I lost myself. That's the truth I can't run from anymore.